This is High Definition News.
I'm Jeff Kaufman. Tomorrow, Long Beach and the rest of LA County enter Phase 3 of the reopening process. But even as more categories of businesses get the green light to reopen, there's evidence that we're not yet clear of the danger of another wave of coronavirus infections. As of tomorrow, LA County Public Health Director Dr. Barbara Ferrer says these are the businesses that can reopen under certain conditions.
Gyms and fitness facilities, pro league arenas without live audiences, day camps, museums, galleries, zoos, and aquariums, campgrounds, RV parks, and outdoor recreation. That includes swimming pools, music, film, and television production, and hotels for leisure travel.
In Long Beach, Mayor Robert Garcia said yesterday the reopening also covers
our own aquarium of the Pacific, and our museums and galleries in Long Beach can also begin to reopen this weekend. The Museum of Latin American Art and our Long Beach Art Museum.
But the mayor says those businesses that choose to reopen will have to do it safely.
These can't just reopen. They have to reopen with restrictions and with some very strict guidelines as to how they reopen, how they're cleaned, wearing face coverings, making sure that there's physical distancing. So all that's in place is not just a complete reopening.
All of that led Garcia to ask and answer the logical question.
What's still closed? Nail salons, tattoo shops, spas and massage, bars. If a bar serves food and has a full menu, there are some opportunities to reopen. Movie theaters are still closed. Live performances, whether it's the symphony or theater, entertainment centers, concerts, stadiums and arenas, and larger theme parks and festivals and large gatherings of big events are still not allowed by the state of California.
Also, bowling alleys and arcades will remain closed for now. You heard the mayor mention large theme parks as not having permission to reopen, but Disneyland announced yesterday that it will try to reopen the downtown Disney shopping area on July 9th, and the Magic Kingdom and California Adventure a week later on July 17th. It will need the state's permission to do so. Disney says it will limit the number of people allowed inside the parks at one time, and you'll have to make a reservation to get one of those slots. Safety guidelines will be in effect, including a requirement for face masks. Now, you're probably not thinking about $100 a person trip to the happiest place on earth if the pandemic has put you out of work and you can't pay the rent. But in Long Beach, the city has your back. Mayor Garcia yesterday.
The council approved a proposal that we've all been working on that is going to pay up to $3,000 per month for 3 months that will support renters and tenants for those that qualify in the city that are low income or that are suffering economic hardship because of COVID-19.
The program opens to applications on June 22nd, and you can find the application at longbeach.gov. There will be a lottery since there are more people who need assistance than there is money to assist them. No deaths from coronavirus in the LBC in the past 24 hours, so the death toll remains at 103. There were 40 new cases, so the city's caseload is up to 2,436. LA County reports 67,000 cases and 2,768 deaths. In all, 115,110 Americans have died of coronavirus. That's the equivalent of everyone in El Monte wiped off the map. 2,064,000 cases around the country, and around the world, 7.5 million cases and 418,107 deaths. County health officials also revealed a change in LA County's R number. You remember that's a measure of whether the virus is expanding its reach or contracting. When R is less than 1, the virus is receding, and that was the case until recently. But with reopenings and the relaxing of some distancing rules, R is now above 1, which means the virus is still spreading. LA County Health Services Director Dr. Christina Galley on the county's ability to handle a surge in coronavirus cases.
The number of hospital beds and the number of ventilators across the county continues to be adequate according to the current projections to be able to meet the anticipated number of new patients that will require hospital-level care over the next 4 weeks. However, the number of intensive care unit or ICU beds may become inadequate in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
After 2 weeks of protests, has anybody contracted the coronavirus as a direct result of being in the streets? Dr. Ferrer says most people who test positive for the virus have multiple possible sources of their infection.
We do have people that we know have attended protests and they are positive. In the few cases where we know, we've actually found a different source of exposure. and it wasn't actually the protest.
The protests were about the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis and police brutality and racism in general. The LAPD says it's investigating 56 allegations of officer misconduct during the street demonstrations, 28 of them involving use of force. 7 officers have already been removed from street duty while the investigation proceeds. Melina Abdullah of Black Lives Matter showed reporters canisters left in the street. She says they contained rubber bullets that officers fired into the crowd.
The intention is not just to cause harm against those who are directly met with batons, but also to have a chilling effect on protests.
The Long Beach Police Department has banned the use of the cartoid restraint, a type of chokehold that restricts blood flow to the brain. It's not the type of chokehold that was used on George Floyd in Minneapolis. The LAPD and the Sheriff's Department have also suspended use of the cartoid restraint, and the legislature is considering a bill that would ban it statewide. Minneapolis and Portland have done it. School districts in those cities have cut ties with city police departments. But the union that represents most LA City Schools teachers wants to go one step further. It's calling for the elimination of the district's own police force. The LA Unified Police Department, separate from the LAPD, is one of the biggest police agencies in the country. A day after George Floyd's funeral, his brother Philanese was on Capitol Hill yesterday asking the House Judiciary Committee to pass a Democratic-sponsored police reform bill. Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler asked Floyd why Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin kneeled on George Floyd's neck when he was no longer any sort of threat.
I don't really know why he did it, but personally, I think it was personal because they worked at the same place. So for him to do something like that, it had to be premeditated, and he wanted to do that.
And intentional.
Yes, sir.
Chauvin is charged with second-degree murder in George Floyd's death. He and 2 of the other officers who were there that day are still in custody, but one of them, Thomas Lane, has made bail. There's been a lot of pressure in the past few years to remove statues that honor Confederate generals and rename schools and other institutions named after Confederate heroes. In 2016, for example, Robert E. Lee Elementary in Long Beach was renamed for Olivia Nieto Herrera, a local teacher who founded the first bilingual Head Start program in the LBC. A lot of people don't know that there are 10 military bases in the U.S. named after Confederate generals. Yeah, American military bases that carry the names of people, traitors to be exact, who took up arms against the U.S. and lost. Fort Bragg, Fort Benning, Fort Hood, and 7 more, all named for Confederate generals. There's even a Fort Lee, as in Robert E. Lee. The Pentagon has always resisted calls to rename the bases. But after George Floyd's death in Minneapolis, Defense Secretary Mark Esper and Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy said they're open to a bipartisan discussion on changing those names. Then yesterday, President Trump waded in. He tweeted, "My administration will not even consider the renaming of these magnificent and fabled military installations." Speaking of the Confederacy, NASCAR is banning all displays of the Confederate flag at its events. The guy who was President Trump's national security advisor for about 10 minutes in 2017 was just about to be sentenced after pleading guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russian officials before the inauguration. Then the Justice Department filed a motion to dismiss the case. The federal judge instead appointed a retired judge to take a look at the case and report back. Yesterday, he did. He said Flynn should not be allowed to withdraw his guilty plea and the charges should not be dismissed. He also said it was pretty obvious that the only reason the Justice Department wants the case dismissed is because President Trump is trying to help out Flynn. Not good enough, the retired judge says. No hearing date has been set. Thanks for listening to High Definition News Online. To listen live, tune to High Definition News during Mornings on the Beach. Weekdays at 8 a.m. on Long Beach Public Radio, KLBP 99.1 FM. And on 22 West Radio in Long Beach, 88.1 FM, HD3. You can also listen live at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern at KLBP.org, 22westmedia.com, and BPM Beats 1.
There's a very busy fellow looking at the sky. Yes, a very busy fellow, and I'll tell you why. He's working on the weather to bring to you, well, what's the weatherman?
Long Beach and Southern California weather. Enjoy the heat, because after today, we're in for the big cool down. Expect 81 in Long Beach and along the coast, 89 in Metro LA and Orange County. From the High Definition News Signs of the Times desk, the creators of the reality TV series Cops tried for years to get the show on the air. Then in 1988, TV scriptwriters went on strike for 5 months. The pipeline of shows was going dry and networks were getting desperate. Fox bit.
Turn around. Get on the ground.
I don't understand why I'm being arrested right now.
Cops premiered on Fox in 1989, and for 32 seasons, it's followed the same basic formula. Hero cops outwit and outrun sneaky, sniveling, stupid criminals.
Cops is filmed on location with the men and women of law enforcement. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
But civil rights activists have long criticized cops for glorifying officers and trading in stereotypes about people of color. Fox canceled Cops in 2013, but it was picked up by the cable channel then known as Spike. Spike has a different name now, Paramount Network, and much of America has a different view of police officers than when Cops premiered in 1989. The mass protests over George Floyd's death are evidence of that. Paramount Network did not give a reason, but yesterday it canceled Cops. And now comes word from A&E that it's also dumping its police-themed reality show, Live PD. Now you know what we know. I'm Jeff Kaufman, High Definition News.